This week on MotoWorld, indoor motocross warfare, ArenaCross style. An in-depth look at one of motorcycling's true living legends. And observed trials riders gather for the 19th annual Trial de Espana. All this and much more next on MotoWorld.
MotoWorld is brought to you by Coors, the first draft beer in bottles and cans. Coors, the original. Honda motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, and scooters. Honda, come ride with us. Fram Autolite, the makers of Fram oil filters and Autolite spark plugs. Suzuki, ask your dealer about Suzuki retail financing for motorcycles and quad runners. Ride on, Suzuki. And by Castrol, motor oil engineered for today's smaller, higher revving engines.
Welcome to this holiday edition of MotoWorld. The year is getting shorter and shorter, but there is no shortage of action in the world of motorcycling. Stay with us and you'll see what I mean. First up, motocross on a track the size of a hockey rink.
First, there was motocross, a European sport that, due to terrain and weather variables, is frequently difficult to watch. American ingenuity solved those problems and called it supercross. Emphasis here is on spectator comfort and total race visibility. There is one major problem. Rental on a stadium like the Houston Astrodome is rather steep. Enter the next level, ArenaCross. Events are held in hockey rink-sized coliseums that accommodate 5,000 to 10,000 fans. The Coors Indoor Motocross Championship Series is a prime example. It's racing at its exciting best, in a controlled environment, and at a reasonable cost. Spectators and fans alike love it.
It's a lot of action. You get women. It keeps you in shape. It's an awesome sport.
It's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of jumps and some accidents, and nobody gets hurt. They don't go that fast, but it's an exciting sport.
Well, actually, the reason I come is to look at all the cute guys in their tight pants.
In addition to tight pants and racing at the Columbus event, fans were treated to a jumping contest. Emphasis, though, seemed to be on how not to do it. Believe it or not, this is action from the warm-up round. Yes, indeed, a 10 in anyone's book. The race action that followed was just as spectacular. Pee-wees on 50cc automatic cycles and full-blown pros. They dashed and crashed their way to main event wins and plenty of life's most embarrassing moments. It should be pointed out that while ArenaCross crashes are commonplace, injuries are not. Speeds are relatively low, and the athletes are in tremendous physical condition. Needless to say, spectators looking for race action or just plain excitement get their money's worth at ArenaCross.
From the fantastic action of ArenaCross, we go to the fantastic action of road racing at the famed Daytona International Speedway. Dave Bowman recalls one of the most memorable efforts during the 1986 Cycle Week, courtesy of this week's Fram Autolite Flashback.
This was the Quantel Sport Cosworth Battle of the Twins Racer as it appeared during the 1986 Daytona Cycle Week. The handcrafted British import featured a monocoque frame and an 820cc twin-cylinder Cosworth engine. Handling the riding chores was another import, veteran Paul Lewis. The Australian and the Cosworth came to Daytona to try and dethrone the dominant force in the battle of the twins competition, the Italian Cougar Ducati. In the early going of the 75-mile event, Lewis put the Cosworth into the lead. It had been a long time since a British import had led at Daytona. Behind Lewis, the two factory Cougar Ducatis of American Jimmy Adamo and Italian Marco Lucaneli. Into turn one, and Lucaneli outbrakes Lewis to take the lead. The diminutive Australian doesn't give up, though, and the result is fairing banging contact at well over 100 miles an hour. It was later learned that Lewis suffered a broken ankle in that incident. Later, more contact as Jimmy Adamo was sent tumbling as a result of the retaliation by Lewis. In the end, former world champ Lucaneli took home the honors, while Lewis finished a courageous second. In fact, Lewis was taken away on a stretcher, broken ankle and all, after the winner's circle celebration. Although Lewis and the Cosworth failed to end the Cagiva Ducati reign, their memories were forever etched in the annals of Daytona history. Reporting from MotoWorld, this is Dave Bowman.
Still to come on MotoWorld, a look at this year's International Motorcycle and ATV Show Tour. Meet Bud Ekins, racer, stuntman, and longtime friend of the late great actor Steve McQueen. And coming up next, a unique variation on the Hare Scrambles theme. Would you believe team competition?
Just when you thought all the 1988 racing titles had been handed out, wouldn't you know, a couple more pop up. We found the first one billed as a world championship in Nelsonville, Ohio.
This could be a scene from a motocross Grand Prix. A closer look at the equipment, though, tells us it's not. The bikes with narrow bars and hand protectors are built for dodging trees, like in a Hare Scrambles. Up for grabs, the World Championship team title. The nudger on the left, waiting for the signal to start, is Jeff Russell from Charcy, Ohio. Jeff is one half of the defending World Championship team. The other half, former National Enduro champ Terry Cunningham, shown here in the role of rocket launcher and cheerleader. The difference between this event and a normal Hare Scrambles is when Russell gets tired of riding, he'll come in and partner Cunningham will go out. To keep track of who's doing what and who the leaders are, the rider on the course carries a canvas scorecard. At checkpoints, the card is punched. Winners are determined by counting the punch marks. Therefore, when a rider comes in, he must pass the card to his partner going out. Watch and you'll see what I mean. Terry Cunningham is on the course with partner Jeff Russell on deck. Terry enters the pits and in a highly choreographed routine dismounts, and while his pit crew takes his bike, runs to his waiting partner. The card exchange is made and Russell heads back out to the course. This year's 4th annual World Championship event was held on a 7-mile track with a wide variety of terrain. Included was a small mud hole that grew noticeably large as the day progressed. You'll also notice that avoiding the mud hole created problems that were, well, probably worse than the mud itself. After completing 18 laps in just over 3 hours of racing for the second year in a row, first place honors fell to the Russell-Cunningham team, but not by much. A mere 5 seconds back was the duo of Kevin Brown and Gene O'Neill.
Off-roading in Arizona is very different than off-roading in Ohio. The biggest difference is the fact that Arizona is mostly desert. There are no trees to weave around. Instead, the challenge is wide open, high-speed terrain. Case in point, the final round in the Hare and Hound National Championship. Chris Larson has the story.
Wickenburg, Arizona. Population just over 2,000 desert dwellers. But when there's a Hare and Hound nearby, the town swells to, well, at least 2,500. Round 8 in the final event in the National Championship Hare and Hound Series saw at least 4 riders mathematically alive in the title chase. In 1, defending national champ Dan Smith. In 2, Kawasaki-mounted Paul Krause. And in 3, Garth Sweetland. The 3 championship contenders would have to traverse a 97-mile course consisting of 2 loops and 12 checkpoints. From the start, Krause, number N2, shot into the lead on his 500cc Kawasaki. The course, although not terribly difficult, was extremely fast. The high speed was the result of a layout which rarely strayed from well-worn paths. ATVs also were involved, and here 2 guys try to settle the argument, what's better in the desert, ATVs or bikes? Sorry, ATV fans. Entering the second loop, Krause still led with N1 Dan Smith trying hard to catch him. Behind Smith, N3 Garth Sweetland. If that order held to the end, Krause would be champ. Fans eagerly awaited the trio at the finish line, but instead of Krause, it was Smith who came to the line first. Smith had charged to take over the lead just 2 miles from the finish. Later it was learned Krause was victimized by a deflating rear tire. Here's the battle for second between Krause and Garth Sweetland. That inside move by Krause went for naught as the finish line was several yards in front of the flagman. Final finishing order, Dan Smith first, Garth Sweetland second, Paul Krause third. For taking his third National Hare and Hound Championship in dramatic fashion, Dan Smith is our Castrol Rider of the Week. The Husqvarna rider will receive a jacket and plaque for his championship ride. Reporting for MotoWorld, this is Chris Larson.
Desert racing is a tough sport without a lot of notoriety. Dan Smith, he deserves every award that comes his way. Coming up in our next segment, a look at one of the true motorcycle legends of our time. We'll be right back.
This portion of MotoWorld is brought to you by Rolaids, the antacid millions rely on. Use only as directed.
This week's Coors Behind the Scenes segment profiles motorcycle legend Bud Ekins. In this world of inflated titles and Hollywood press clippings, Ekins has earned his place and stature by deeds rather than words. Racer, collector, stuntman, and longtime friend of actor Steve McQueen, Ekins is a true legend. Dennis Torres has the story.
I'm not in a good position. Let him stick his neck out. Get the hell out of here now.
Oh!
Tell me.
I'm gonna have a baby.
Congratulations.
All American officers so ill-mannered, 10 days isolation helps.
Captain help.
20 days.
Right. Oh, you'll still be here when I get out.
The late actor Steve McQueen was many things to many people. To motorcycle enthusiasts, he was their spokesman and a Hollywood legend that appealed equally to men as well as women. The man in this photo with McQueen isn't a marquee name like McQueen, but he was just as responsible as the late actor in bringing the excitement of motorcycling to the masses through television and movies. His name? Bud Ekins. Remember that fantastic jump in the movie The Great Escape? Well, that wasn't Steve McQueen. That was Bud Ekins. Remember actor Michael Parks in the TV series Then Came Bronson? Well, it's Bud Ekins again, at least in this poster and in most of the stunt sequences. How about Steve McQueen wheeling that Mustang around the streets of San Francisco in the movie Bullet? You guessed it, that was mostly our friend Bud. A former gold medalist in the six-day trials, co-founder of the present-day Baja Desert Races, and former international motocross star, Ekins has witnessed motorcycling's evolution firsthand.
Well, yeah, definitely changed. I know in, like, even in 1955, when I wanted to open up a motorcycle dealership, nobody would rent me a building just because they had asked me what I was going to do in there. And I said, I want a motorcycle shop. They wouldn't even talk to me. They didn't want the image. But when Honda came along with that slogan, you meet the nicest people on a Honda, that changed everything.
Like Steve McQueen, Ekins loved old motorcycles. Ekins had one of the finest collections of vintage bikes and cars around. I use the past tense because a week after these shots were taken, his restoration business in Los Angeles was broken into by thieves who stole just about everything. A tragedy indeed. Some of Ekins' bikes came from McQueen's enormous collection that was auctioned off a year or so after his death. McQueen had left some of the machines to Ekins in his will. McQueen and Ekins had an up-and-down relationship over the course of 25 years, but even during the low points, there was always mutual respect.
Like in Germany, we were sitting on the set one day, and I says, "Want some coffee?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "I'll get you some." He says, "No you won't." He says, "I'll get you some coffee." So, okay. So he comes back with coffee, and he says, "Don't ever get me coffee." I said, "Why not?" He says, "Because these people see you and think that you're my flunky." So that's the kind of guy he was.
What kind of guy is Ekins? Cut from the same mold as his deceased fellow enthusiast, McQueen. They did what they wanted, when they wanted, and didn't care about society's rules and regulations. The 58-year-old legend's recollection of the day he retired from active competition paints a self-portrait in the classic Ekins style.
I'd come home at night, still have my leathers on, take them off in the patio, throw them in a corner, and sit down and have a drink. And about the next Sunday, I'd go out there and find the leathers wherever I threw them or something, or Saturday when I'm packing up, and go. Well, one Sunday I didn't do it, and that was it. I just didn't do it anymore.
A MotoWorld salute to Bud Ekins, one of the pioneers and longtime ambassadors of our favorite pastime. Reporting for MotoWorld, this is Dennis Torres.
Team Suzuki presents the MotoWorld Suzuki Event Calendar. A look at some of the major events coming up in the world of motorcycles and ATVs.
Motorcycle enthusiasts suffering from cabin fever can get some relief with the International Motorcycle and ATV Show on January 6th through the 8th. The show is in our nation's capital. St. Louis will be the next stop on the tour. The dates at the Cervantes Convention Center are January 13th through the 15th.
And still to come on MotoWorld, we'll look at what this year's International Motorcycle and ATV Show Tour has to offer. Our MotoWorld cameras captured all the highlights during the show's Atlanta stopover. Keep it tuned to TNN.
This week's Rolaids Rough Ride of the Week goes to this ArenaCross rider. After that, he definitely needed that 100% Rolaids relief.
Welcome back. You know, championship races are great because of the drama and excitement they offer. But sometimes you just want to go to an event to compete, gather with fellow enthusiasts, and have some laid-back fun. Mark McKay reports on one such event that has been going on for 19 years.
For 19 years, observed trials riders, spectators, and friends have gathered for the Trial de Espana. The name Spain's Trial was given to the event in order to pay homage to Spain's Bultaco motorcycle, acknowledged as the pioneer and frontrunner of today's trials machines. The unique aspect of this observed trials meet is the fact that many different ages and skill levels compete. The idea is fun for those who may not be die-hard devotees.
Usually this is a well-attended event. The sections are a little bit easier than normal, and we get a lot of people coming out that don't normally come out to our events. We had probably 150, 200 riders today. A lot of spectators showed up, and we're going to be selling some raffle tickets, and that helps as well.
The raffle winner took home this trials-inspired Honda Reflex motorcycle. The raffle and wide cross-section of participants raised money to help defray costs incurred by California trials riders competing in the U.S. and abroad. Observed trials is scored by observers who monitor a rider's progress through as many as 25 sections. Putting your foot on the ground, called a dab, costs you a point. Sometimes a dab can turn into something a little more costly, especially if you're way up high. And as the old saying goes, what goes up must come down. Listen to those brakes squeal. The winner of an observed trials is the rider who garners the fewest penalty points. At the end of the day, after amateurs, members of the media, and would-be champions had their chance, the pros took over. Special exhibition sections with a much higher degree of difficulty challenged even the best pros at the Trial de Espana.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and if you're not having fun, you can't ride well. The enjoyment is what brings out the energy and the psyching in your riding.
Reporting for MotoWorld, this is Mark McKay.
The International Cycle and ATV Tour also features a trials exhibition. Now, the course is not nearly as scenic as the one in California. However, the obstacles are just as tough.
And the spectators were amazed as the monarchs of balance jumped to the tops of cars and back to the ground. They were dazzled at the sight of a man playing seesaw while on a motorcycle, and astounded by other antics aimed at keeping your feet on the pegs, but your wheels not necessarily on the ground. The Stadium Trials Riding Exhibition was just one of the countless attractions at the Atlanta show. In addition, there were cycles of every size, shape, and color. There was a lot of chrome and enough accessories to stock a warehouse.
You know, if Santa Claus had checked out the Atlanta show, it wouldn't surprise me if he put his reindeer out to pasture. I can see him now on Honda, on Harley, KTM, and Kawasaki, on Yamaha, Husky, Kajiva, Suzuki. And I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Keep your wheels on the ground and your feet on the pegs." Be sure you're with us on New Year's Day and again on January 8th, and have your VCRs ready to go. We'll recap the 1988 motorcycle year. From all of us here at MotoWorld, have a very Merry Christmas.
MotoWorld has been brought to you by Coors, the first draft beer in bottles and cans. Coors, the original. Honda motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, and scooters. Honda, come ride with us. Fram Autolite, the makers of Fram oil filters and Autolite spark plugs. Suzuki, ask your dealer about Suzuki retail financing for motorcycles and quad runners. Ride on, Suzuki. And by Castrol, motor oil engineered for today's smaller, higher revving engines. The executive producer of MotoWorld is Lou Seals. MotoWorld is a production of Seals Communications Corporation.